Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. Those of you who have braved the weather, I appreciate that. And those of you at home, I hope that you're comfortable. I'm going to try to spend no more than an hour, so I'm going to rip through a bunch of slides, but I do want your questions throughout. So if we come across a topic that you'd like some clarification on, please just let me know, okay? But this is part two. In 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to do financial aid. We'll be in this room with John Boyle, and he's our financial aid expert, so I hope that you can make that. But in our quick review of last week, what I really try to do with this kind of program is take a look at this big mountain, this big project, and kind of chop it down into small, manageable parts. This is what we tried to do last week. I presented the timeline again this week. It's out on the table there. It is on the website. And as our slides, I promise, will be on the website very, very soon, along with the broadcast from last week. But we tried to really make some sense out of this by going step by step through a timeline. And we looked at some different terms as well to get an idea of what college admissions is all about. But tonight we're going to look at two parts. First part, how colleges select our students. You know, and I think that's a big reason why a lot of people come to these kinds of programs. They say, well, how do I get my kid in, and what kind of things are they looking for, and that kind of thing. And I know a lot of the students have that on their minds too. You know, and how can I prepare myself for this scrutiny and this transaction that takes place? The second half of this is going to be the other side of the coin, which is how all of you are going to choose them. Colleges are a business. They're in business to stay afloat and make money, and they want you. They want your business. So they certainly want your application. Whether or not you're going to attend the school is another story, but they certainly want you to apply. Okay, so let's get after it. As I said last week, I speak to a lot of college admissions reps, and I ask them questions, and I say, okay, what is the number one thing you're going to look at first when you're evaluating a student? What do you think that is? Anybody? Take a wild guess. Did anybody say grades? Grades. And I, wasn't it just last week I said don't worry about it and calm down and all of that, and all of a sudden it's the number one criteria college is going to look at. Right, they're going to look at the number. Okay? We are going to give you two averages when you return in September as seniors. You're going to get a transcript, and it's going to have an unweighted average, which is, if you get an 80 in a class, it's an 80. And we compile that average. It's going to be unweighted. We also give a weighted average, which gives a multiplied value to, let's say, an honors course or an AP course. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, yeah, again, my first inclination is take a deep breath. Students in the room, let's prepare for this. Let's not worry about it. You know, some of you in this room might be athletes. I come from an athletic background, and I think to myself, if I had a challenge like this, I wouldn't, for the week leading up to the game, I wouldn't worry about it. I would think about how could I best prepare to, in the most efficient way, to do my very, very best. And that's the way I want you to think about grades. You have the rest of this year, and really next year too, to hone those skills that go along with grades. Let's not be as concerned with the numbers. The numbers will follow if your process is good. So we provide both, the weighted and the unweighted. So you're an English 10R and you get an 80, we're going to multiply that for a weighted average by 1.05. So that 80 is basically an 84. I use 80 because it's easy to multiply. If a student is in honors, and that could be a wind ensemble, honors class. It could be a college level class, which we now weight this way. We're going to multiply that final grade by a factor of 1.1. So an 80 becomes an 88 for weighting purposes. And it gets better. If you're in an AP class, as many students I see in this room are, we know it's harder, and the colleges know that it's harder. So you're going to get a bump there. You're going to multiply that. We're going to multiply the computer by a factor of 1.15. So an 80 actually becomes a 92. We have many students in the school that have weighted averages over 100 for this reason. Okay, so you get both. Colleges want to see both. And sometimes colleges would like to recalculate. You're going to hear that term, recalculate. That means we're going to take out all of your electives and we're going to add up English, social studies, math, science, and world language, and we're going to see what that average is. So again, we want you to do as well as you can in these courses. Your GPA is set at the end of the junior year. Doesn't mean that your senior year grades don't count. As a matter of fact, we send mid-year grades. If you apply via Common App, we send them automatically because it's part of the Common App. But if you apply via some other way, let's say SUNY app or by the coalition or whatever, those other means, you would have to give us your written permission to send your grades. But by and large, those senior year grades can be a great opportunity. Yes, question? Does the AP language get factored in? We're talking about world language? And world language. Yes, absolutely. That question pertains to recalculation. Sometimes colleges will say, yes, very high average, but we want to just see what the student earned in those 5 core main classes. So that's what we call recalculation. Okay? Okay, so they looked at grades already, but it's not the whole story. So what would be another strong criteria college is going to look at, like their number 2? Usually number 2. Anybody have a guess? No? Yeah, strength of transcript. They're going to say, well, got a 90-something average. Let's see what he got that 90-something average in. What kinds of classes did he take? And again, students in the room, don't think that you have to take every AP course that we have in the building. If you can do so and you can handle it, outstanding. But it's not always necessary. What we try to do is get a student to be on their level. So in other words, if you're able to do AP work, do it. If you're able to do honors work, do that. If you're in Regents classes, do as well as you can there. You know, sometimes students shy away from taking challenging courses because they don't want to do the work. That's the problem. So we want students to challenge themselves to take chemistry, to take AP if they can. Okay? My thing is this. If a student is trying their best and they can't pull in a 75, let's say in world language, there's a lot of students say, like, should I take the next level of world language? I really don't enjoy it. I say, can you get a 75? They said, yeah, I'm doing okay. You should stay, okay? It's really when that student is getting, going to extra help, they're getting tutored and so on, and they still are having a lot of difficulty, then we say, maybe that AP level is not good for you. You're going to get a better GPA in a Regents level. Okay. Be the best student you can be on your level. Okay. Let's go on. Okay, so after GPA, strength of program, sure, they're going to look at test scores. Now, this is tricky because sometimes students are going to apply test optional. That's okay. You can apply test optional, but they're going to look at these other things more closely. So, all the questions that we looked at last week. Should I send my scores? Are my scores good enough? Do they meet that 50 percentile of the college? You know, those kinds of things. But I would recommend every student in this room and those watching to consider a testing calendar anyway, even if they say, you know, I'm not a real good test taker. Now is basically February of your junior year to say, I'm going to get some prep, I'm going to take a course, maybe in October I'll take the SAT again, whatever that happens to be. We still have 3 SATs coming up this year, March, May, and June. So even if you're not a great test taker and you try an SAT or an ACT, you don't have to send the scores. Right? But I do think for those of you who can and are willing to put in the time, it can be a bonus. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that if you can get an SAT score that's commensurate with your grades, because students always ask me, is that a good score? Is it commensurate with your grades? Then it's a good score. Then it's worth taking. Whether or not we send it is a deeper conversation you can have with your counselor. Okay. We talked about this last week, score choice. You have nothing to lose except the Saturday morning. Take the test with us. If you do well, that's fine. If not, You don't have to send it. Test optional. There are many colleges that will allow you to do it. Apply without a test score. Is it right for you? Not sure. And that's a conversation, again, we have individually. Okay. The next criteria, the things that they're looking at grades, strength of transcript, standardized test scores, and they're going to take a look at your letters of recommendation. This is my suggestion to everyone in this room, and I give this credit to Mrs. Swanson, who came up with this phrase, and I borrow it and give her credit all the time. Be the student that you want your teacher to write about. Think of that. You have another semester with Mr. Tallerine or Ms. Gordon, and if you want them to write that you participate in class, then raise your hand and participate in class. If you want them to write that you work well in groups, then by all means work well in groups and be that inquisitive type of student, diligent and responsible that they're going to be able to cite. Yes, Mrs. Reynolds. Yes. The question is, can a BOCES teacher be a letter of recommendation writer? Absolutely, yes. Again, because we want someone academically, and that could be BOCES, it could be band. Now, depending on the major, there's where it comes important. If a student is going into a math or science program, a STEM program, I would recommend that student get a letter of recommendation from a STEM teacher. But any teacher that can really expound upon the things that we're talking about, being inquisitive and having curiosity and delving deeper into a subject matter and working well with others, all those kinds of things, if that can be written by a BOCES teacher, then by all means. A lot of times parents will ask me, well, he's very close with his scout leader, or she's very close with a drama coach or something like that. That would be okay. If a college limits the number of letters of recommendation that they would accept, then we will paraphrase that letter into our counselor letter of recommendation. The counselor letter of recommendation at times is 2 pages long. It's a character analysis. So anything like that, if there is an affiliation with the Scouts or clergy or something like that that you want to send to us, or the student wants to send to us, many times the counselor can incorporate that into their letter. And we really try to make those letters as powerful as possible. The counselor can't write what they don't know. So if you're doing something over the summer, or even something that you might think isn't important. I had a student once, I didn't know why he was going home after school every day until I read his biography that he gave for his letter of recommendation. And it turns out he was going home and he was caring for his elderly grandfather before his parents got home from work. And he would, make him a meal, empty the dishwasher, and just help out. So he couldn't really get involved necessarily in activities. But I said, wow, I would have no idea you were doing that. And that was something we wrote about in his letter of recommendation. So anything that's going on in your life that you think your counselor could report, let them know. Any questions about letters? You should ask your teachers third quarter. We're in the third quarter now. Maybe as we get into the month of March, that's when our junior teachers are going to start to get, not that they're going to do it immediately. A lot of them will say, yes, I'm going to write it over the summer, or I'll write it in the fall. But to ask them maybe in a month or so is not a bad idea. Okay? Okay, next important piece of this package. What do you think? Any guesses? Okay, the essay. And I put the essay in this order because at this point, we've got numbers, SAT scores, we've got grades, we've got transcript, and so on. We've got a letter of recommendation, but now we have something from the student that tells the college who they are and why they have a passion for something. The essay prompts for the College Board haven't changed in about 5 years. They're there. They'll be on our website as these slides will be. And when you click on them, you'll see a lot of the themes center around resilience, overcoming adversity, grit. That's such a college word now, grit. Kids who are plowing through the tough courses and plowing through, tough activities. They like to talk about growth and how you grew as a student, as a person, how you're curious about your chosen major and things of that sort. So a lot of times students say to me, well, I'm 17 years old, I haven't had that kind of life experience to really expound upon something like that. But what my recommendation, and we could talk about essays all night, but my recommendation is start to jot some stuff down now. Start to keep like a journal on your computer of some of the things you've done, some of the things you want to do, and things like that. And then when September comes, August, September, just start writing. Put something on that screen, and then we'll help you polish it. But you got to have a piece of clay there to polish. So start to journal a little bit, bounce some ideas off your counselor and your parents, and then we'll put something down that's powerful. Okay? Okay, excellent student. What else did they do in high school? This is activities, obviously. Now, I have a theory about activities. I've been here for 35 years. I was a club advisor. Activities don't get you into college. Sometimes they help. But activities, the real beauty of high school activities is that they help our kids grow up. You're going to handle money. You're going to resolve conflicts. You're going to understand relationships better. You're going to face challenging situations in activities. They help us become college students. If it's halfway through your junior year, there's still time. I absolutely recommend every student in this room and those listening to get involved in some kind of activity here in Wausau High School or in the community. Scouts or as I said before, clergy or any community-based organization. Now, that being said, there are levels of activities that I think it's important to understand. Colleges, and we're not only in business to please a college. Let's get that out of the way. As I said, the activities are really there for you as kids to grow up. But if your activity profile on the Common App is either blank or it's sparse, it sends the college a message about how involved you're going to be there, okay? So we don't want to be that. We don't want to have a poor profile, okay? So let's go to fair. What's fair? Okay, fair is a lot of students at Wausau High School. I joined a sport, I played a sport, I was in a club, I had a job, something like that. It's okay. It's not going to help you. It's not going to hurt you. They're going to say, okay, he was involved. Pretty good. Okay, next level. This could help you a little bit. When a student shows some depth of involvement, some of these kids have been in the band or orchestra since 7th grade, all the way up. They marched in every football game, and we make the playoffs every year, and these poor kids are out there in the cold. Level of commitment in the band. Some kids have been in Key Club for 4 years, and they've been in front of King Cullen, collecting for the poor and all kinds of stuff. Depth of involvement. Maybe a leadership position. Not bad, okay? Now we're getting there. Now they're saying, okay, this is the kind of kid that could help us here at the college. Now, there's another level. Now, I preface this level because not every kid could do this. Not every kid has the means. Not every kid has the time. But there are some times when, on that level of commitment, some students here have founded clubs. Some students here are all-state athletes, or they're all-county musicians, or something like that. If you don't reach this level, it doesn't mean you're not getting into college. Please, don't misunderstand me. But if you can, if you are going into your senior year and you've been part of the Key Club for 3 years, and now you say, this is my senior year, and I'm going to make this something of my own and leave a legacy, that's going to show up there. It's going to show up on your Common App. It's going to help you grow as a person. It can enhance your college applications. Okay? Enough said about activities, but there's so much good stuff going on here in this school. Try to be a part of it. Okay? The last bit, okay, I'm in pretty good shape time-wise. The last piece, I think, of this package is called demonstrated interest. Didn't really exist about 10 years ago, but now it does. And what demonstrated interest means is, and I had the rep from Geneseo, she was actually in this room. We did a college fair in the fall, sat in the corner, and I spoke to her, and she said, I have kids, we send emails, we could tell when they open them. Forget about returning them, but just to open them. Are you doing that? You can't attend every open house. I can't attend every open house. Sometimes there's a virtual open house. Try to make those. They're easy. You could do it at sitting on your bed, okay, on your computer. Pick a spot. This is my new thing because this has become such a phenomenon. Pick a time every day or night, let's say it's after dinner, that worked for me, of open up the Chromebook, open up your personal email, that Gmail, that's your first name and your last name, dedicated to colleges that you put on your college app. Who emailed you today? Open it up. Open up the email. Certainly if it's a college you're interested in, then return the email and say, yes, I'm interested, or I'm not able to attend. You're going to be invited to stuff by the college. We were invited to a Quinnipiac's hockey game. You can't make everything, but at least you respond. And you say, thank you so much, I appreciate it, I'm still interested in your school, I can't make the hockey game, or whatever the case might be. I hate to play this game, but it's part of it. So if you could be interested but never respond, they're going to think you're not interested. Okay? So, all right, I think I made it before 7 o'clock because there's so much really to discuss. We're going to move on, but first I want to get some questions about how our kids go through this process. Anything? Any questions at all? Yeah. Yes. Good question. Thank you for your question. It's a good question. About the essay and its length. The Common App, the main essay on the Common App is 650 words long, max. So if you're 651 words, they're going to chop off the last, they're not going to be able to print it. So it's 650 max. It can be shorter. Minimum, I think, is 250, but I want to check me on that. You should, don't just try to fill the page. Try to answer the question of what they're asking you to do. So if you're 600, you're not going to be penalized for that. That's the main essay. A lot of these colleges are going to have supplemental forms on the Common App. You finish the Common App, then you click on the particular college, there'll be another essay. That essay most likely is going to be specific to that college. And it could be, what is it about Stony Brook that makes this an attractive place for you? That kind of an essay. Because some of the essays you can cut and paste. I'm not going to necessarily recommend that, but you can. You just have to make sure that you take out the name of the other college you cut and pasted. But by and large, the kids are going to write. They are, That's why if you're working with our English teachers, they're going to help you with, how should I say, the grammar and the structure of your essay. Our counselors are experts in the content. And that's where I think students go to them and they say, is that my theme, is it enough? Is it there? Is it too trite? Is it too much? And I think we help you polish that up. We have a philosophy in our department that we don't doctor essays to the point where it's no longer the student's essay. We really, we have integrity in that way. So we want them to, it'll always be their work. So we're not going to mix up the words too much, but we will help you with the content, and we'll steer you away from things that might be too controversial and maybe steer you back to something that will help you get in. Okay, did that answer your question? Okay. So those are the seven things that I see. Anybody have questions about any of those? No? Yes. Say it again. Can a transcript be requested prior to September? We try. We really do. By the time we get Infinite Campus to get rid of the mistakes, and then we check the averages. The computer checks the averages, then we check the averages. Nothing goes out until we really have checked it thoroughly. And what we want to do is give each student a copy, like a draft. That's usually around mid-September, and we give them a few days to check it out. You know your grades better than I do. So you might say, no, that grade is wrong there. And then we check it. Every once in a while, we'll make it, there'll be an error like that that we correct. So we try not to rush it. There are schools, especially in the South, that want your transcript September 1, right? We make exceptions. If a student has that kind of a deadline, we'll meet it. We will, okay? But by and large, our students are applying by October 1st, and so we do have that month to make sure everything is correct. Okay? Good question. Anyone else? No? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay, good question. The Wantagh High School profile is on our website, and we send it with every application electronically to the college. So since we send about 50 applications a year to Binghamton, they get it 50 times. So they know us. You know, they know that we have a higher weighted average than most schools because we just grandfathered that in. That weighted average was there when I was a counselor, and I've been the director for 17 years. So it's just something that we've kept. And but the colleges know that. That's why they like to see the unweighted and the weighted. It has our average SATs. It has all of the AP courses that we offer. It has some demographics about our community and some demographics about our faculty. And so that's our school profile. It's available on the guidance website. Okay. Other questions about this? No? Okay. Okay, so the other side of the coin. And really, before we leave that, students, again, take a deep breath, prepare for this, go step by step. You're going to be fine, but prepare. Prepare, work with us, work with your teachers to maximize your learning, maximize your grades, maximize that letter of recommendation. So now we're going to flip the coin. And we're going to say, well, they're choosing us, we're choosing them. There's about 6,500 colleges in the Naviance database. So we have to narrow that down somehow. Okay? So many colleges to apply to. We're going to use terms like REACH. How many of you've heard of REACH school? Students in a room? People heard of that? Okay, we're going to go over what that means. Target schools, schools in your range academically, and safety schools, schools that you're reasonably sure you're going to get into. We're going to use those terms not only for selectivity, but also for financial aid, or for finances. Let's take a look at this, okay? I split this up into what I call primary research and secondary research. Now, primary research is, we have 6,500 colleges in the database. How can we narrow that down to 100 or even 50? How are we going to do that? And I liken it to buying your home. Okay, when we all bought our homes, we said, okay, it should be in a nice area. What we deem to be a nice area should have nice schools. Maybe it's close to a library. Maybe it's close to my parents or distant from my parents or whatever the case might be. There's got to be in a cost range, of course, right? Some amenities, good schools, right. So then we narrowed that list of homes. Same thing we're going to do with colleges, okay? Narrows your choices. So for me, and again, a lot of counselors do this slightly differently, but for me, I have 6 basic criteria. I'm going to go over them with you. Okay, the first criteria, because something is going to drive your search as a family. Something. It's either going to be finances. It could be the major, a very specific major that's going to drive this search. But by and large, here are the 6. And the first one we look at is location. It's not just where geographically the school is, but also what are these characteristics around around location. Okay, how many of you, students in the room, watched a movie with your parents and you both had a very different idea about what that movie was like or whether it was good or was bad, right? I see some nods in there. It's a lot when you go to see a college. Parents, your child's vision of this college is going to be different than yours. I'm going to give you a quick anecdote. We visited Boston University, my son, myself, and my wife, and we get out of the car, and I said, Peter, it looks like Queens Boulevard. It's just, it just did. It's a city street, and there's hustle and bustle and everything. And he's like, all right. I said, I'm not really getting the vibe. Yeah. Get back in the car. He kind of like, we did the tour, the whole thing. Driving through Connecticut, we stop at Quinnipiac. Get out of the car, and I just said, Pete, this is it. There was a stream and a little bridge going over the stream. I said, just sign, this is it. He's like, why on earth would I ever go here? He didn't want that. Guess where he is? He's in Boston. So it's like, so keep that in mind. There is an intangible that drives this. And your child, your son or daughter, doesn't quite know what they're looking for yet. They might, but consider that through their eyes. Now, location, when we get to location, there's going to be that urban or suburban kind of a thing, but it's also going to be the surrounding area, and you're going to look at some local characteristics. But suspend that for now. This is actually University of Miami. We didn't visit. Maybe we should have. Okay. But is the location right for me? Is it safe? That's tough to gauge, but those are the things that maybe your parents are looking at that maybe the students in the room aren't really keyed into just yet. How easy is it for you to get in a dorm? Is it lit? Well lit at night and things like that. Are you an outdoorsy person? Do you like to be in a place that has a lot of art and music and stuff like that? These all go into location. One thing my son didn't factor in is the cold and the snow that he's not crazy about in Boston. But that's the same in Binghamton and most of our upstate schools. So bundle up. Okay, so location's one. And you're going to, as a family, you're going to come up with a geographic maybe range. You might say, all right, 5 hours is a lot, maybe. Although sometimes students stretch that with Geneseo and Bingham and Buffalo because they're in New York State. But by and large, a lot of our students stay within like a 4 or 5 hour radius. Doesn't mean you have to. We have a lot of students apply down south too. Okay? So that's location. Criteria number 2. Can I get in? Can I get in? So many students say, I really want to go there. Can I get in? Okay, so there comes the reach and the range and the safety. Okay? So we're going to apply to some schools. I have an 85. They want a 90. That's a reach. That's fine. But sometimes students come to us with a list and they're all reaches. And we say, pump the brakes a little bit. How about some other kinds of schools? Some kind of school that maybe is in your range. You have an 85, they want an 85. That's a school in your range. Okay. And how about we throw in a couple of safeties? Schools that aren't, I don't think there's a bad school out there, but school that's going, you're reasonably sure they're going to accept you because you have an 85 and they normally take an 80. So let's throw a few of those on there. And we cover the bases in terms of selectivity. That's a very hard thing for a counselor or anyone to really forecast because year by year, a school can get a different set of applicants. And so from one year, we'll have students who get in, another year they don't. And so it's very hard for us to forecast. But we do so with some data, and we do our best to steer you in that direction. But it's always a good idea, too, when you get that transcript, and you can have your transcript now, by the way, an unofficial copy, if you're visiting colleges, and having a conversation with a college rep, and to see where you might stand academically. Okay. All right, so we're narrowing down. We've got some location criteria as a family. We're looking at some selectivity criteria, and now the next thing that's going to drive this is going to be cost. Okay, that is just a factor. And the problem with cost is that you're not going to know what it's going to cost you until the spring of your senior year. We're going to do financial aid next week. Hopefully, you'll get a financial aid package before then. You don't have to commit to that college until May of your senior year. So, you can get a financial aid package and then really compare. But, and kids especially, don't fall in love with that high-priced school if your family can't afford it. Suspend that too and say to yourself, okay, I would be also happy at the school that's maybe a financial safety, maybe a public school like a SUNY. So work together as a family and come up with some of these schools. Yes, you're going to have some financial reaches on that list, but if you're applying to all financial reaches, I don't know anyone's finances in this room. If money is no object, God bless you. But for many of us, it is an object, and so we want to keep an eye on that. Okay? Safety reach. I use those terms for finances too. You know, so we're going to have a few financial safeties, a few financial range schools, a few financial reach schools. Okay? So we're going to keep narrowing things down. There's another criteria we're going to look at. Oh, yeah. Be here 2 weeks. Financial aid. Okay. So what is most important? This could drive the whole thing. Or not. Most popular college major in America is undecided. And I'm not being facetious. Most students apply and their major is undeclared. And that's okay. However, you don't want to change schools. So, start to make some lists. This is going to be on the website, so all of those are live links. Niche, Naviance, obviously, you know about, and I love the Occupational Outlook Handbook that's put out by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's real stuff. It tells you about national average starting salaries of jobs. It talks about employment outlook and things like that. It's a great conversation starter. Students that are listening, play around with these websites. That's all you're going to do right now. List 10 of them that you think you might want to do. There's a lot out there. But if you are focused, some of the lucky ones are focused and they say, well, I'm going to do engineering, civil engineering. If you want to do civil engineering, we're talking about 6 schools. Really, it's a very small number. So that's going to drive this. But if you're more open, you want to go into education. No one wants to go into education anymore. I used to do a room like this, and I'd say, who wants to be a teacher? And half the room would be like, yeah, I want to be a teacher. Now it's like I'm asking them to juggle hand grenades. You know, it's like, I would never do that. It's a wonderful career, I could tell you from experience. But yeah, you want to choose something like education, a lot of schools. It's not going to necessarily drive this decision-making process. So you want to see really where this leads to. But that's real important. It's very rare for a student, I shouldn't say very rare, but it's not common for a student to say, leaving high school, I'm going to major in something, and then not change their mind. Once you get to college, your world is going to explode. You're going to be exposed to a lot of different things, and a lot of students do either refine that choice or change it altogether, and be ready for that. Go to a school that has at least your top 3 options, okay, or the top 3 choices, okay? I'd like by this June if you could trim that list to 5. Again, by doing this active research, if you, by the time you apply, can narrow that to 3, and a college happens to have all 3, that's a good college for you. And we could start, well, we'll talk about secondary research in a few minutes, but then to see how colleges do that major. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's some musical accompaniment tonight. Okay. For some students, I've talked to a lot of students, for some of them they just say, I don't care. But there are some big differences. A lot of schools are right in that 10,000 range like that. But there are some enormous schools, okay? Central Florida. It actually went down. Last year it was 71,000 something. That's insane. But, you could have a friend in a class, and then the next semester you'll never see them again. It's enormous, and some students like that. They say, I grew up in a small town, Wantagh, and I knew the same kids for 13 years in classes, and now I want to meet a lot of people. Central Florida, the Ohio State University, places like that, you'll meet a lot of people, okay? Other students like Marlboro has 185 students. There's more students in the senior class here. But, of course, these are extremes. But some students will say, I want something less than 5,000. I want something 4,000. I want people to know me. I want to see the same faces. I want to feel a sense of community like that. By all means. And other students want to be in a college that's a big-time sports and like a Central Florida kind of a thing. So that could drive it for a lot of students that are really not sure of what those characteristics mean because they've only known this. So, but it's something to consider. There are benefits of both. There really are. You might find some very big lecture hall type classes at some of these bigger colleges, and you might find that small touch with the smaller end demographic schools. Okay. Number 6 is something that is important to you. This could be a lot of different things. There are students with IEPs, and they go to these colleges and they go to their resource centers and they see how are their hours? Are they open on the weekends? Can they get tutoring? Is it run by adults or is it run by other students? What kind of learning disabled center is it, and what do they specialize in? Other students are either want to play NCAA competitive sports, they want to play intramural sports, or they want to watch or be a spectator at a big-time sports. That's really a very popular thing here at Wantagh High School. Kids, we have a bunch of kids who went to Alabama. We have some students at Ohio State and some of these big places, and they go to Saturday football games, and that's awesome. But it could be a driving force here, okay, what they're looking for. There may be health situations. York College in Pennsylvania is across the street from a hospital. So some of our parents who have said, you know what, I want them to have an away experience, but they're diabetic or they what have you, and they felt comfortable having that kind of a situation. Or that they were close to a family member out of state, something like that. But that's a personal type of thing, all right? Every school has a different kind of culture and focus, right? I remember visiting Skidmore College upstate, and it's a very artsy kind of place. They don't have a football team, okay? They have art studios, and they have recitals, and they have rock bands, and they have, like coffee houses, and they have stuff like that, and music. Different kind of a thing. Some students say, I want that environment. I don't want to watch the football team, And so I think what's important in this kind of a category, a student once told me, they said, well, when I go visit, what exactly am I looking for? And I said, I can't answer that for you. But if you have an idea of what some of these special considerations might be, they might then say, like, yeah, I think I like that. I like the music part of this school, or I like the art part of this school, or I like the sports part of this school. I like that, University of Rhode Island is right near the beach up there, and they hang out there. Whatever it happens to be, honors programs, So I think we might safely shut the door at this point. Can we do that? That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. Okay. I just really, good. I wanted to leave some time for your questions. So let me rip through this. That was all preliminary. Those 6 categories took us from 6,500 colleges to a workable number, 50, something like that, okay? That's going to narrow things down. We want a medium-sized school. We want physical therapy, here's some range and reach types of schools. Here we are. Now, and this is usually done college fair, that's why I gave you that tonight. This is where you say, okay, this fact separates this program at this college from that program at that college. I'm going to give you an example, physical therapy. Some colleges have a 6-year program. You get admitted, you're in for 6 years, and in 6 years you're a doctor of physical therapy. That's nice. Other colleges will say, well, we can get you there. Okay? That's a little different. So, yeah, what is it about? Now, if you don't ask that question and you just see, yeah, physical therapy is a listed major at both of these schools, but that's a nuance. So now we're getting into secondary questions. We're starting to ask the nitty-gritty. We're starting to get into the weeds a little bit and start to ask some questions that only you can ask. You can sit around your dining room table at night and say, we're going to the college fair tomorrow. We're going to see Binghamton. What are we going to ask them? And that's tough. A lot of students say, I don't know what to ask them, but they should. And they could ask about, what kind of merit-based scholarships do you offer? Do you have to apply for them, or do you apply as soon as you apply for the school? Okay? What are your study abroad programs like? Where do they go? How much does it cost anything past admission? For some kids, they really do want to study abroad, and that's a big deal, right? What's the gym like? Do I get to go to the gym, or is that just for the football team or the basketball team, something like that? Or for lab hours? Can I do research at your college, either as a freshman or a sophomore or something like that? If I'm an artist, what are your portfolio requirements? I'm a musician. What are your audition requirements? Is there transportation? We were at UConn. Pouring rain, too. But there is a bus that circles the whole place. And students just hop on the bus, and they get wherever they want to go. But it's a big campus. But you almost have to ask these questions or visit, and you can't possibly visit all of them. So you ask the questions. What's your transportation like to and from campus? What about dorms? Freshman dorms. Is housing guaranteed for all 4 years, or do we have to keep applying? Are the freshman dorms triples? Everybody know what a triple is? You're living with 2 other people. Okay. Some other things. What about these college credits that we paid for? Are they going to transfer? Do you need a certain average to have them transfer? What about AP credits? Will you take a 3, or will you only take 4s or 5s? So these are the kinds of nitty-gritty questions. Some students or parents make a chart so that they can gauge, like, okay, this college told us they'll take the college credits. This college told us they wouldn't. This college is a little less expensive. This college is a little bit more distant. That's not a bad thing to do. So then I caution you, if you apply to 20 colleges, it's a big chart. And it's a lot of emails to keep track of. If you can limit that number of colleges that you apply to a workable number, then you make that chart. And as the months go on, you start to say, okay, this one's eliminated. It's too much, it's too far, or it doesn't really have your major. We checked into it. Some of these things aren't to our liking. You start to pick some of them off. And maybe you get down to a more workable number of colleges to apply to. Recruitment, job placement, parent access. Once they're 18, you don't have access to their grades or anything. As a matter of fact, at the program that we do in June here, we do advise parents to get a healthcare proxy. Because once they're 18, God forbid something happens, they can't share that medical information with you. So that's a story for another day. So after preliminary research, so this is something that's a project. I recommend that the students sit in the middle with the computer. Parents sit on either side. You have to be in the driver's seat, students. Have to. Because if you're not engaged, it doesn't work. And then you start to list some of these questions, because the more you dig into it, you might say, like, okay, so how far is the dining hall from my dorm? Or how much is the dining plans? And am I going to use that? Some of the questions you're not going to know the answer to until your student is on that campus for a semester. And then you might say, we'll adjust the meal plan or whatever it is. But for now, students in the room, you may not know what questions to ask, but that's really what it is. It's not about getting answers. It's about getting questions and asking questions. Okay? Where to find secondary research information. I don't know, is this touchscreen, John? No, I don't think so. That college website is actually Quinnipiac. And I put it up there because, just as an example of how to find information really off the college website. You can get their annual tuition and fees. You can get some of their housing policies. You can get some of their preliminary criteria, things of that sort from the college website. And it might stimulate more questions. And like I said, more questions are better at this point than answers. Social media, if you're really sold on a school and you may want to tap into their Instagram account or something like that, just make sure it's legit. See us, guidebooks, alumni, things like that. Okay? We went through a lot in 50 minutes. I'd love to take your questions. I know that was kind of overwhelming. But we talked about how colleges choose you. We talked about how you choose them. Yes, sir. I'm so glad you asked that question. How do you find out about student outcomes at colleges? When you visit, or at a college fair. At a college fair, they may not know the answer to this, but let's suppose you are looking at a nursing program. Okay, it's not a bad question to ask. How many students graduated from this program last year? Of those students, how many are employed and where are they? Generally, they're not going to say where a person is employed, but they might say several are in research programs. We've had another few working at a local hospital, or, you know, they do track their graduates. So you should be pleased with an answer like that our graduates are working. If it's a good statistic, it'll be plastered everywhere. You know, 99% of our graduates are employed or something like that. But that's a great secondary question because, you know, by and large, we're in this for a practical way. We do want our students to be educated, but we want them to be employed at the end of this experience. Okay, so that's a great question. Other questions? Okay. Yes? How do we check the emails, and where do these emails get generated from? So, okay, so if you haven't gotten any emails yet, that's okay. You will. Once students go to college fairs, and I recommend that you register using that barcode or that QR code, because then what's going to happen is you're going to fill out that QR code. It's going to be the student's email. So many times, parents do this for their students, and they put their email or they put their name. So have your student do it. You've been to college already. So once that email is out there for the colleges, it really is going to go to any college that you go to a booth at that college fair, and you say, I'm interested. They're going to send you lots of emails. Now, the problem is they're going to send you important emails, like registration deadline is tomorrow, and they're going to send you not so important emails, like get your merch at the bookstore. This has happened. And when you're bombarded with emails and they all look the same until you open them, one of our students missed the deadline for a scholarship because she just said, I get emails from them every night about sweatshirts and stuff like that. So she missed it. So my recommendation is, and again, if you apply to 25 schools, that's going to be a problem. But yeah, check those emails, open them up. This one's about merchandise and this one's not. And certainly if you've applied for scholarships, you want to make sure that some of those emails could be about that. All right? But that's a real good question. Yes? You getting the emails? Yeah. They have your email. See if through those emails you can change that email to your daughter's email, because she really, again, more and more, colleges aren't, they want to hear from the students. They don't want to hear from us as counselors, and they don't want to hear from us as parents. They really want the student to be the ones replying to the emails or anything like that. Okay. No, that's a good point. Yes. Okay, let's talk about letters of recommendation. Let me go back to that slide. If that's major. Oh, it's way past, it's way before this. Okay, let's talk about it. I just wanted to get it up on the screen. Activities, we talked about extracurriculars, essay, and recommendations. Okay. Depending on the teacher, if a student went to a teacher tomorrow and said, would you write my letter of recommendation, they wouldn't say no, but they wouldn't say I'm writing it yet. And to be honest, they have another half a year to go for that. That's why I recommend when we get back from February break, like March, that we really start our part of it then. In other words, we're going to meet with juniors in groups in March, early March, and then we're going to meet with all of them individually for the junior conference, of which parents are invited. At that time, it's the season. And so Mr. Tallerine or Ms. LaPera would not be shocked if one of you came to her and said, would you please write my letter of recommendation? Now, that being said, there are, you see the bottom line on this slide, there are forms that help. There's a teacher letter of recommendation form. And the questions on that form, you could download it right off of our website. The questions are going to be, what class did I teach you in? What did you like about my class? Was there a project or a book or something like that particularly you enjoyed? There's going to be questions like that. Mrs. LaPera can then use that information more properly in her letter of recommendation. So I'm going to say, when we get back from February break, that might be a good time for everyone to ask. So that's the timeline. Now, counsel letter, you don't need to ask your counselor. Your counselor writes a letter for every student in their caseload. But they are going to ask you for the counsel letter of recommendation form, which has different kinds of questions, and it has a bio. When we ask students about a bio, it's not necessarily, it's kind of, again, like I said before, the things that we don't know, the activities that we don't know about. Maybe the family situations, if you choose to share, that we would write about. So that's kind of what we want in the bio. There is a parent form. And the parent form asks from the parent perspective. How has the student shown growth, and how has the student shown responsibility? And there are times when we could take something from that and use it in a letter of recommendation. Okay? Does that fully answer your question, sir? Okay. Yes. So if every counselor has about 45 to 50 seniors, they go through that process over the series of months. So if a student says, I have an October 15th deadline, they're going to be among the first that's written. Now, if your child has a September 1st deadline and we know about that, then we'll put that person first. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
For that connection over the STEM courses,
No. The question is, when you're choosing letters of recommendation writers, sometimes you have a connection with someone that's not necessarily in your chosen major. That's okay. Choose two. Two letters of recommendation. The counselor makes three. Some colleges will only accept two. Some colleges only accept one. So that's why we ask students for their preference. And they might say, I have a great relationship with this humanities teacher, even though I'm going for a STEM major. I'd like for that one to be my top choice. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that, because that letter from the humanities teacher could be very powerful. And I read them, yes.
It doesn't really have to do with like, oh, in science, they did like extraordinary in the labs. That is not really what we're writing in their college recommendation. The college sees that by their GPA, by their transcript. That is not the stuff we're writing. Always have your kid go to the teacher that they have made a strong connection. Is that teacher will write greatest thing?
I agree. I really do. Because, as you said, their proficiency in the STEM subjects will show up in the transcript, okay, and possibly in AP scores and stuff like that. So if there really was a special connection, then by all means. But I would like that letter writer to address some of these characteristics, and not just that they like the student. Sometimes, rare, I will go to a teacher and say, you clearly like this student, but did they display any of this? And if they did, please put it in there. That's going to be important to me. Yes. Our teachers write great letters. They really do. They really do. No. I'm glad you brought that up. There is actually something that the students will check a box on the Common App, and it's a FERPA waiver, which means they waive their rights to see those letters of recommendation, and here's why. Because if a college gets that letter from that humanities teacher and it's glowing, and the teacher says that the student is cooperative and inquisitive and works well with others and all of that, and they know that the student can't see that letter, then they know it's real. They know that those are real comments. But if they know that the student can see that letter, then it's like they might have written that letter, assuming that the student would read it and be upset if they didn't write that. So it really does benefit the student. And I do check the letters. Our teachers and our counselors write beautiful letters. They really do. But the more they know, again, students, the better they can write. So make some time to be with your counselor. Yes. Okay. At what point did the counselors sit with the students to go over the college list? Timeline is this. I forget which Wednesday it is in March. The first Wednesday in March I have scheduled for the junior college workshops. A lot like your scheduling workshops, we're going to have you in groups per counselor, smaller groups, and we're going to kind of do what I just did, kind of give you a little synopsis of how to get started, right? And then from there, we're going to ask you to make appointments with us. Because we do that because some students are the first ones online. They're like, I'm ready. I've done all of this. I'm ready to go. Some students are not ready, and that's okay. So the students that are ready, parents are invited, and these sessions can be anywhere from 45 minutes. Sometimes they're longer. It depends on the kinds of questions you bring. And we'll really sit with you through that. Now, a lot of times we'll have a conference with a family in March or April, and then in May, the student will come back. And they say, I visited. I want to talk some more. Have a seat. And we do it again. So we're really there for you throughout this process. We really, with a goal, like I said last week, by the time August 1st comes around, we want you to be able to sit down at the Common App. We have a Common App workshop here, and you're very comfortable with the number of colleges you're applying to. You said, I've done some research with my family. these are the schools. This is the one I like the most. This is my second one. This is my reach school. This is my safety school. That's your job, obviously, and get good grades between now and then. Okay? It's good questions. Yes? The question is, can the letter of recommendation be from someone outside of the school or from earlier years, middle school, like that? Okay. Preferably, I would like to see someone that taught the student in 10th or 11th grade. That doesn't mean I don't get letters from Mrs. Thomas, Earth Science sometimes. But when we go, the further back in time we go, the less powerful the letter is. And what we really want, that addresses one thing in terms of the time. That's why Mr. Tallerin gets a lot and Mrs. Gordon and the teachers who teach our juniors get the most requests. But we get some 10th grade and some 9th grade teachers too sometimes. Now, to address the other thing, I have kids who are very close to coaches, scout leaders, and stuff like that. They say wonderful things character-wise. But they can't say this. They can't say, how did the student perform, or not perform, but how did they fit into an academic environment currently? And that's really what I want them to say, because what the letter of recommendation, the question that's answering is this student going to contribute to the academic environment in my class? And if a chemistry teacher can say, yes, this student worked well in our groups, mastered the material, helped others who didn't understand it. That's current. That happened now, and that can be very powerful. So I would prefer that. Now, if there is a coach or a scout leader or something like that, send us that letter. Oftentimes, we can include some quotes from that letter in the council letter as a more powerful character analysis. Yes? Correct. No. We can load something up to Naviance. It's just that I'm the author. You know, so it comes from Frank Musio, but it's from a scout leader. But I agree with you. And but if there are some relationships out there that are real good, tell them to send us the letter, and we'll use it in another way. Yes, Mr. Burley. Yes. Is it okay for an art teacher to give a letter of recommendation as opposed to a core subject? In some cases, yes. In those cases, if there is a long-term relationship like that the student has been with that teacher for multiple years, that's a good thing. That's powerful. They can expand upon that. If the student is going into an art-related field, certainly, then that makes perfect sense. If students tell us, I'm going into civil engineering, then I'm going to say to them, I need at least one of these from a science or a math teacher. It just makes sense, unless it's superseded by I have such a tremendous relationship with this one teacher. Okay, but that's why these are individual conversations. But if that situation doesn't exist, or it does exist, let's say with an art teacher, then by all means, they write great letters too. Okay. Other questions? Okay. Yes, Mrs. Burley. No. Did I thought I put that on here. The college fairs. There are a few. This might be. What I thought I put on here was oh, here we go. In addition to the college fair at Hofstra, there are college fairs that are taking place locally. We don't have them here in our school, but they're so close. Plain Edge is having one, and Levittown is having one, Plainview. So let's say March 4th. That gives us a little over a month. If you were to come up as a family with a list of schools you want to see at the fair and questions to ask them, that would be great homework to do at this point. And just say, I want to ask them about college credits. I want to ask them about APs, stuff like that. That would be worth your time. Okay? Yeah, I didn't, yeah, here we go. Did everyone get that? Because, yeah, I think our last, oh yeah. This is our last slide. So, in 2 weeks, we'll do financial aid. And that's a great time to come in with questions beforehand. If you're able to get on FAFSA.gov, make a student pin, students, and a parent pin for the parents, and then at least take a look at this, you might have a better idea of what to ask. But he's good. We had him here in November. I'm glad to have him back. And we'll be here in a couple of weeks to do that. All right? Yes, Mrs. Messina. Yep. I don't have that. I mean, you might be able to call these individual high schools. They're usually smaller. The big one is at Hofstra. The big one is April 14th. I'm glad it's the latest one. It's later because you really do build. I mean, I do this for a living, and I remember going to a college fair, and then we left, and I said, oh, why didn't I ask that, you know? And so it happens to all of us. But so by the time you get, let's say, to the April 14th, you'll say, I missed that question last time, I want to ask it again. Okay? So. Well, I thank you all for coming. I'm going to stick around for some personal questions if you have them, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.